What is good, YouTube? It is KJ. I am back with some more Draft League content. It's been a while, I know. I really took a pretty long break from any Wi-Fi Draft League content. I'm ready to jump back in. I happened to see a post on Reddit, and shout out to the homie Kiloaboom, because the only reason why I kind of ended up looking at the message, or looking at Reddit and like kind of diving in, is because I saw that he had posted on the original thread, and I was like, oh, well, I know him. Maybe this is somebody that he knows. Maybe it's a dope league. I can jump in, see what's going on. So big shout out to him there. But anyway, I plan to record everything for this league. I know it is a Wi-Fi league. However, there are some flexibilities with like playing Showdown some weeks. I am very excited to jump back in, and going forward, I am going to be doing more Pokemon content. Before I jump into the team or anything, I want to kind of answer questions that I know a lot of people have had, and that is, what is Draft League? So anybody that's not really in the Draft League community or in the Pokemon community doesn't really know what Draft League is, so I'm going to very quickly explain it, right? It can be a little confusing, so I'm going to give y'all that heads up. Anybody that is familiar with fantasy sports will kind of jump onto this idea a little quicker. You get X number of coaches, where X is usually 10 plus. So in this particular league, there are 16 of us, and the draft pool is every Pokemon other than sort of the box legendaries for Scarlet and Violet. Somebody that's an admin or commissioner, whoever's running the league, assigned point values or tier values to each of the Pokemon. Fluttermane, which is one of the new sort of super broken Pokemon, would be the highest point value, where something like Pikachu might be 1 point, right? Something like Pikachu is 1 point. Fluttermane is the maximum amount of points, which is 18 points. We also get a Terra Captain. So anybody that has played the newer Pokemon Scarlet and Violet games know that terastallizing is a new, I'll say gimmick, because effectively that's what it is. Something that allows basically the Pokemon to change type in the middle of battle. You can assign the Terra Captain, but that's going to take out of the total points that you have. Anything's the max amount of points, say Fluttermane, it's gonna be costing 4 extra points to make that your Terra Captain. You get a certain number of points. So in this league, we got 120 points to draft 9 to 12 Pokemon. After the draft, there's like a grace period where people can kind of make changes for free. And then after that, the season starts. Commissioner, admin, etc., they end up generating a schedule. In this case, it's an 8-week schedule, and you basically play against other players. We schedule the match. So we'll say, okay, I'm free Sunday, 3 o'clock Eastern. We have to bring Pokemon that are on our team, but we don't know which 6 are coming to the game. That's kind of a general sort of overview of how draft works. So that all said, I want to get into actually talking about the draft. All right, so I had picked 10, and so I never expected to get anything really good, anything super broken. Fluttermane, Shenpao, Dragapult, Palafin. Would have wanted to use any of those. I think all of those would have been cool to use in draft, maybe except for Dragapult, because I've used Dragapult before. All of those mons I listed, they're super broken. They're not usually allowed in draft. After seeing I got picked 10, I was like, okay, pick 10 out of 16. There's not really any chance that anything's gonna fall to me. I was like, this isn't gonna happen. But I was thinking, okay, maybe I'll get something like Garchomp or something like Golden Go, which I have used in the past. I'll make it work, right? And then it got to my pick, and one of the shiny new toys was available, and that is Iron Bundle. So Iron Bundle, super cool. It is the future form of Delibird. It is just really, really good. It has good special attack. It has great speed. I think it's the second fastest Pokemon drafted behind Dragapult. This thing just hits super hard with its stabs. Water and ice are very good offensive types. It doesn't have a lot of move pool flexibility. It does get access to Air Cutter. It does have some agility sets. It does have the ability to pivot with Flip Turn and U-Turn. Honestly, just being able to click Hydro Pump, Freeze Dry, Ice Beam, Blizzard in some cases, I probably won't run Blizzard often. Just being able to click those, I think is going to be really great. Going forward, I'm thinking, okay, I could make this my Terra Captain. I don't necessarily want to decide on that immediately, because I did have a couple of other mons in mind that I think would have worked really good as sort of a defensive Terra Captain, just in case, like where I couldn't necessarily get a certain type or anything like that. And that kind of goes into my second pick, one of the first things that jumped out to me when I looked at the draft board, and that is King Gambit. So King Gambit is the evolution of Bisharp. Bisharp. Bisharp already had solid stats. This thing has incredible offenses and defenses. Very, very excited about that. It has 2 very good stabs in both Dark and Steel. It also has a new attack called Kotao Cleave, which is a Dark type move, and that is also something that is super valuable. Also has access to Sucker Punch, which is good. Pretty good move pool. It doesn't have knockoff, but that's okay. I was thinking this is something I could make my Terra Captain. Ideally, I'd like to pick up a fairy at some point, some protection against the glaring fighting weakness that I have right now. I could try to take a more defensive Mon. I really want Slowking. Slowking was actually something that I really want. Chilly Reception is, I think it's called Chilly Reception, is really cool. It sets up the hail or the snow or whatever you want to call it now, which sets up Iron Bundle to kind of buff its defenses, right? Or its special defense specifically. Slowking got taken, my backup got taken, and so I ended up getting something that I am familiar with. I do really enjoy the Pokemon. It did get nerfed in this generation. Honestly, it does still pressure a lot with a lot of the things that it does, and that is Cinderace. This is Libero Cinderace. Again, Libero did get nerfed, so it only changes on the first attack. Cinderace a lot of times is clicking Pyro Ball or U-turn. So Cinderace won't actually get affected by this until it needs to, because I'm not actually changing type. It does have some utility, like it does bring Court Change to the table, and honestly, something like Court Change is really clutch. Now I'm thinking, okay, at some point I need to get a spin blocker, but also I'm still kind of worried about some of the bigger threats. So again, Chien-Pao is really scary. Fluttermane is really scary. Dragapult is really scary. Palafin is really scary. Thinking about it, like Iron Bundle being so fast and then also having access to Quark Drive to be able to boost its speed potentially was something that I was like, okay, this is good. And then my other 2 Mons have priority. So overall, I'm thinking, okay, I did really still want an answer to stuff like Dragapult, stuff like Fluttermane. And so my next pick ended up being something that honestly is a pretty good counter to both of those things, and that is Garganacl. This thing is super cool. I fell in love with this thing's design. It is just a rock type. It does have a new move that is an exclusive move to it, Salt Cure, which is a very annoying move. So I was looking at this and I was like, okay, I have King Gambit. Salt Cure does do more damage to water and steel types over time. Garganacl, taking this thing off the board, 1, makes it so that like it kind of protects King Gambit in a sense, right? Because that's one less way that any of my opponents would be able to break down King Gambit defensively. Then it also gives me another potential Terra Captain, and this is actually the Mon that is gonna end up being my Terra Captain. I am gonna go with Terra Rock and Terra Fairy for Garganacl. And yeah, I'm super excited about this. This thing, I've used it in the past. It has access to rocks. It has recovery. It has Salt Cure, access to things like Earthquake to hit other Mons. It has access to Body Press and some like Iron Defense sets. So overall, I think this thing's going to be super, super good. Now I'm looking at my team and I'm saying, okay, now with 2 rockers, I have the ability to remove hazards from my side of the field with Cinderace, with Court Change. I'm feeling good about that aspect of the team, like hazard control. One thing that's really, really worrying me, Iron Bundle is very frail. So I'm looking and I'm like, I need a water resistance. So let's go out and get a dragon. Looking at the board, looking at what was left, I was like, okay, the dragon that I think makes the most sense for me is Cyclizar. This is another Mon that when I first saw it, I was super excited about this Mon. It does get Regenerator. It cannot use Shed Tail, which honestly I think is better for the league. Shed Tail is pretty toxic, allows you to take a substitute and then pivot out into another Pokemon. I still think Cyclizar is going to be really good. I think 8 points was pretty good value for it. The ability to Rapid Spin, be a fast pivot, still have all the dragon resistances. It is a normal type, so again, I do need to work on that fighting weakness. That's okay. And this thing's super fast, rounds out my speed, my top end speed really nicely. So I have Iron Bundle at 136, Cinderace at 119, and now I have Cyclizar at, I believe, 121 or 123. I was at first considering Noivern, but that got sniped. Gengar had gotten taken too. 3 pretty scary ghost types. Dragapult, Gengar, and Fluttermane. Obviously, Fluttermane and Dragapult can hit Cyclizar super effectively. I needed a normal type. I needed something that was going to be able to be immune to Ghost. The next Mon that I drafted, I'm pretty familiar with. I actually really like the Mon. It is one of the Pokemon that wasn't originally in the base Pokedex, but did have one of the sort of events that put it into the game, so it is legal, is Decidueye. So Decidueye is a great Mon. I love this thing. I think it was pretty expensive at 11, but we had a ton of points. Like we started with 120 points to get 9 to 12 Mons. I knew I was shooting for 10 or 11 Mons, and Decidueye is great because a Mon with knockoff, a Mon with defog. It has recovery with Roost, and I believe synthesis as well. Ground resist. I didn't have a ground resist at the time. In this generation, lose access to Poltergeist, which does hurt it on the physical side, but overall, I still really like its move pool. It has flying coverage. It still has access to Spirit Shackle, which is a signature move, so that's cool. That kind of made me feel like, okay, I have 3 ways to remove hazards. I'm feeling good. That was kind of where I was thinking, but I was also thinking about like, also need more fighting resists. My next pick, I was like, oh, I'll get a fairy type. I was looking at Doc's Bun. It was 4 points, and I was like, okay, it also gives a fire resist, which is cool. And I think it got taken the round before I took the Decidueye. At this point, I was kind of thinking, all right, I'm not taking a fairy type. And that's what sort of locked in Garganacl is going to be my Terra Captain and is going to be Terra Fairy. Part of that is my fault because I did want a fairy type that resisted fighting. I could have taken something like Tinkaton. In hindsight, I kind of wish I did because I would have had a fairy, but it's all good. We'll make it work. I'll get a fighting resist here rather than the ground resist because I think it's more likely that I'll get sniped or not necessarily get something that I want. The ground resist, I just have to pick up, or even the ground immunity, I just have to pick up like a good flying type, something like that. And there was still some stuff on the board. This next pick, I was really torn between 2 Pokemon. I love both of these Pokemon. One of them is one of my favorites, and the one that I recently grown to love is actually the one that I ended up drafting here, and that is Gallade. Gallade got a huge glow up. Gallade now has sharpness, which boosts cutting attacks or like sword attacks or whatever. Things like Night Slash, things like Sacred Sword, I believe it is, things like Psycho Cut all get a buff when Gallade uses them. Think it gets access to knockoff, but that could be, I could be wrong. I know it does usually, but I don't know if it still does. This gives me a fighting resist. It is psychic fighting. Unfortunately, this means that I don't have it as a dark resist, but that's okay. I do have one of the best dark types in the format, so I wasn't too worried about that. I really liked Gallade's fit. The other mon I was thinking about was Heracross. I just really couldn't get the points to line up in a way that I liked it, because if I went with something like Heracross, I didn't think that I was in a good place to take Heracross and then also spend a lot of points on a psychic type. Moving on to the next mon, I don't know what I was thinking. I think it was a situation of I wanted this mon, it fit good speed tiers, it had the ability to set hazards, but overall I still have a pretty glaring ground weakness. I didn't do anything to sort of fix that. I felt like I had to take this mon here because I don't think it would have lasted. So my next pick was Sandy Shocks. I love the design of this thing. It is super awesome. I think they did a great job with the design. And it's very metal. I will say hunting the shiny for this damn thing was the biggest pain in the ass. This thing is pretty dope. So as I mentioned, it gets access to rocks and spikes, electric type and ground type. Overall, this thing is gonna exceed expectations. Reasonably fast, it has decent bulk, pretty good special attacker. It can run on the physical side, but it's probably not going to be. For 12 points, it is tied for the 3rd most expensive mon on my team. I really hope it exceeds expectations. I don't know. We'll see what happens. I think it's a cool mon. I think it's something that's going to fit really well. My next pick, I was just kind of like, you know what? I'm just going to show it because talking about it, I can't really. It's Venomoth. I wanted a grounded poison, right? There's a lot of T-Spikers, even non-poison types that run T-Spikes. I also wanted to have T-Spikes of my own. I think the setup possibilities are great with Venomoth. The good thing about this grounded poison is that it's not weak to ground. It does have some good speed, so it could be able to outspeed a lot of the ground types. So Venomoth's always a mon I thought was pretty cool. I really think that I can sort of use it in a good role on this team. There wasn't a lot of mons left on the board, and I thought Venomoth was one of the better mons left on the board to fit a role that I needed on my team. Now we look at the team and we're like, okay, KJ, what the fuck? You really need another ground resist or immunity. Having another fighting resist would be good. And that's another thing. Venomoth is a fighting resist, so that is really good. I'm instead going to take Rotom Fan, which is a mon I'm very familiar with. Honestly, anybody that's been following the channel for a while, it seems like every team ends up with a Rotom on it just because it is very versatile. Rotom Fan is a dope mon. It was a little expensive, but it was one of the best mons on the board. And it's funny enough because somebody said, wow, I didn't think I would ever get sniped on something like Rotom Fan. I looked at it and I was like, okay, it's fighting resist. It's also a ground immunity with Levitate. ghost coverage with Shadow Ball. It still has the ability to pivot out with Volt Switch, obviously, because it's an electric type. And yeah, overall, I was just thinking, okay, this gives me a pretty solid Mon. I think it's underrated defensively as a flying type. I think it is pretty solid. And Rotom Fan felt like it fit well. Y'all heard my original plan. I wanted Darkspun. I think if I would have been able to get Darkspun, this team would have been absolutely incredible. I still love this team, right? But the lack of a fairy does hurt. Darkspun was 4 points. I have 4 points left. I came across something, and so I know no bulky waters, but I did come across a water type, and I was like, huh, I didn't realize that this was a thing. With my last pick, I ended up taking 3-point Basculin. Basculin's a cool Mon. Again, it's base, I think base 98. I think it has, and it is both Basculin forms. So I think one of them has access to Mold Breaker. One of them has access to adaptability. This thing also gets Last Respects, which is the super broken Houndstone move that goes up, I think, 50 base points for every Mon that is fainted on your team. I have a base 98 speed Pokemon, has access to Last Respects. It still hits pretty hard. So you know what? Fuck it. Let's take this. So I took Basculin. It still does give me some of the resistances that a water type would give, but it's not super bulky, so I don't expect it to be that. But just the natural resistances I think are good. And yeah, with 3 points, honestly, like, you don't expect it to win a bunch of games. If it comes to a game and does well, that's a success, right? Like, it's by far the lowest point value Mon on my team. In the middle of the season, if I feel like the Terra Fairy Garganacl isn't really needed, I could always switch over, Iron Bundle being my Terra Captain, because Terra Captain switches count as free agent transactions. So what's my naming scheme gonna be? What am I gonna name these Pokemon after? I still don't know. I'm still kind of deciding. Please leave comments, because I would love to know what are some ideas. In the past, I've done like Final Fantasy IX theme, I've done a Golden Sun theme. I really enjoyed this. I'm glad to be back in draft. Also, leave in the comments who you think is going to be like the Mon that performs the best. Obviously, I think Iron Bundle, Cinderace, Kingambit, I think those are Mons that people are probably gonna feel could do well, but I'm hoping Sandy Shocks, Gallade, even Venomoth, I'm hoping I get a lot of good usage out of all of them. So I'll be back next time with a team builder and my week 1 matchup. I think I'm playing the team that has Dragapult week 1, so that'll be fun. I appreciate y'all tuning in, and I'll catch y'all on the next one. All right, peace.